welcome to our witnesses, Assistant Secretary Connor and General Spellman. Last year, this committee took the lead in the passage of the historic bipartisan infrastructure legislation, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I'm pleased to begin 2022 with a discussion of how we can build upon that success by advancing the Water Resources Development Act, which you call WRDA, get this legislation to enactment. Since 2014, the committee has kept to its biennial WRDA schedule, authorizing water resource projects and setting national policies for the Civil Works Program of the U.S. Corps of Engineers every 2 years. I look forward to continuing this track record. The Corps' main mission in the areas of navigation, flood risk management, ecosystem restorations, safeguard our communities, and support economic growth. This fact was underscored just a few months ago when portions of Louisiana were protected from devastation thanks to the Corps projects constructed in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. Moreover, recent supply chain disruptions and accompanying inflation have highlighted the continued need for investments in our nation's ports and waterways, which facilitate the movement of billions of tons of goods and commodities in the United States. These projects and activities are authorized and directed by Congress through our WRDA legislation. The most recent iteration of WRDA in 2020 included several project-specific authorizations, modifications, as well as programmatic reforms. It also provided the Corps with a number of new authorities. The committee continues to oversee the implementation of provisions from prior WRDA legislation. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on the status of the implementation of WRDA 2020 as well as other outstanding policy changes. And I also expect there will be project-specific questions from our members. All of this will inform the committee's work on future WRDA legislation, which has begun in earnest. I thank all of my Senate colleagues and their staff because they've submitted their proposals for the committee's consideration. As I've previously said, it's important that any future WRDA legislation supports the timely and efficient delivery of water resource projects in communities that need them while continuing to meet our national priorities. We must also ensure that communities have access to the requisite technical expertise to address their water resources challenges. The opacity of the Corps' process and programs is a recurring issue. We must not be overly prescriptive, however. Our nation's water resources are diverse, and communities know more about their New York needs than the policymakers here in Washington, D.C. We must preserve the role of our non-federal sponsors in project delivery processes. We must also take care not to divert the Corps' focus away from its primary mission areas. That said, the Corps ought to work with Congress, vice versa, to make sure that we're spurring innovation. And now is the time to deliver those projects better, faster, and as the General and I were speaking earlier in the lead up to this, with the enormous infusion of funds. Delivery of this legislation comes as the Corps manages the $17 billion in supplement appropriations provided to it by the IIJA, which includes funding for WRDA 2020 authorities. That's more than double the annual appropriations and represents an real opportunity to reduce the backlog of some core projects. Prompt responses to oversight requests from the committee regarding this funding are critical, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses about the Corps' next step to implement the legislation. In that vein, I would like to thank the staff at Corps headquarters and the Assistant Secretary's office for their attention to committee requests for information regarding prior WRDA legislation and in advance for their continued assistance as we move forward. Let me reiterate my gratitude to our witnesses for being here today. As I've said in prior hearings, the mission of the Corps are more critical than ever, and the testimony we'll hear today will inform the committee as it moves into its integral role in improving our nation's infrastructure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.